let's begin with the webinar. So we can start with the round of introduction and welcoming you all, and so on we can proceed. So hello, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Techeze's webinar. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us. I am Preeti Sonar, Business Development Manager at Teceze, and I'm absolutely delighted to be your host for today's session. Our webinar today, Minimum Downtime Application Modernization, a practical framework for network for cloud native migration, focuses on a critical challenge helping organizations monetize their legacy application while minimizing disruption and accelerating cloud adoption. So before we proceed, I would like to take a brief moment to introduce Techeze's core capability. So Techeeze is your one-stop solution for all the IT needs. So Techeeze incorporated in the year 2012, and since we are working, so we have spent 14 years building a strong reputation for digital innovation and operational stability. Today, we are proud to operate our headquarters, which is in London and Charlotte. Over this period, we have established physical presence in 47 countries, including UK, US, Sweden, France, Australia, Netherlands, UAE, Saudi Arabia, India as well. In India also, we have 7 parallel offices, which is Chennai, Mumbai, Hyderabad, Ahmedabad, Noida, Pune, and furthermore, we are also a infrastructure and capability to deliver our services and technological products across 147 countries worldwide. At Techies, we are spread across all the industries. So be it like BFSI, pharmaceutical, manufacturer, retailer, system integrator, legal, government. Today, we are a global family over 200 and 2,500 specialized employees, generating $115 million in revenue. This scale capability allow us to reliable and yeah, highly scalable and strong term technology partners for your business. So there is our main capability 6 pillars which you can see in the presentation. Number 1, AI driven digital workplace featuring our unique IoT based smart locker and IT vending machine. Second, cybersecurity services backend with a dual NOC and dual SOC. Besides that, 24/7 help desk protection. Number 3, IT infrastructure and cloud services, which we are gonna discuss in detail. Next is manage IT services, and then goes to a resources augmentation, where we can supply the resources on short term, long term, or on a contractual basis. Now, sixth but not the least, number 6 is procurement as a service. We are handling global hardware and software resellers, sellers and selling. Now, coming back to our focus of today's webinar. We are incredibly pleased to have Mr. Ramesh Alwan with us today. With his extensive experience in cloud transformation, DevOps, DevSecOps, and site reliability engineering. Mr. Alwan will share practical insights, proven strategy, and real-world best practices for a successful. Yeah. Oh, okay. So, on a successful business safe modernization journey. If you have any questions during the session, please post them in the Q&A segment or in the chat box at any time. We have dedicated time to discuss this in detail at the end of the presentation. With that, let's start. Over to you, Mr. Ramesh.
Thank you, Preeti. Good afternoon, all, and a warm welcome to this webinar. For the next 60 minutes, there'll be no generic cloud theory. So this is definitely not going to be a theory class. The session is all about how do you modernize critical applications without losing control of your business operations. It's a very, very summarized statement that I will start with. But from a contextual perspective, let's move on to the next slide. Most cloud migration generally starts with the first question, right? Or it starts with a conversation saying that, what is it that we need to plan? The first thing that comes on top of everyone's mind is architecture. Legacy to cloud, there is going to be a distinct difference in how the whole solution, the landing zone, is architected. A legacy on-prem legacy architecture would be starkly different from how it is in cloud. Right? So that's generally the first thought process that comes. But for a change, what we will do here is we're going to start with a question saying that what happens to your business if the migration goes wrong? Let's assume for a moment that you've created an architecture in which you want to really migrate. You've created a destination where you want to position your workloads. What happens if it goes wrong? How many migration discussions typically talk about the practical aspects of things going wrong? It is not that people don't do it; they do it very regularly. But as we dwell deeper into the presentation, we will see those very salient missing points that really causes a lot of problems once we migrate. Without much ado, let's go through the first set of problems, right? Let's discuss the problems at first. The central problem is business cannot wait for a perfect modernization. Now, there's nothing called, simply putting, there's nothing called a perfect scenario or perfect solution. It keeps evolving over a period of time. And a simple analogy to that is, if you go back and ask our customers saying that, do you have a perfect scope in mind? The answer is no, the scope will evolve. We're giving you a preliminary view of what the scope is, right? And start solutioning as you put together the different pieces of the puzzle. We will then come to you saying, oh, we probably need this, we need to add that. So the whole point is there's nothing that you will call as perfect at the beginning. Let's look at some of the predominant problems or the pressure points that organizations go through today. Modernization this pressure is real today with the proliferation of cloud. The last about 10, 12 years, that if you look back, the cloud has proliferated so much that even small players have started really thinking. When I say small players, not even SMEs, probably small scale industries are thinking, can we really put up a couple of servers on the cloud? Now, does that make sense? Probably yes, right? There are different reasons. The priorities are different. The reasons for which people want to migrate to cloud is different. But generically, if you look across the industry, there are four broad buckets that we will put them on, right? The legacy pressure, unsupported platforms, brittle deployments, slow releases, high support dependencies, and a lot of security exposure. When I talk about all, it is not that companies do not know these. They have known these all along. But the point is, how do we go back and bridge these gaps? What are those 5, 6, 10 things that we need to do to make sure that we're able to address these legacy pressures? How do I manage these when I migrate? Now, the next slide will also we'll correlate this back to how this can be viewed from a customer standpoint. The second bucket is going to be business pressure. Today's customers want continuity. Right? The internal users that are there in your organization, they don't care. Infrastructure is being upgraded, applications are being modernized. They said that's fine, that's your problem. We need access to do our work. So they expect the systems to be up and running when they need it. And the last part is typically during the transition, there are specific areas of issues that will have to be addressed that typically impacts the customer journey, because the customer does not consume a specific component in the journey, right? When you talk, let's pick an example of an e-com application, right? When you get onto an e-commerce, nobody says that I logged into Amazon.com or Amazon.in or Amazon.uk, just to look at a product and come back. Probably, yes, you looked at it now, but later on you want to go back and buy it. So the intent is to go through the entire life journey. Now, so it's always important to understand which part of the journey is getting impacted because of all these transitions and transformations or modernization discussions that we have. And the third bucket is cloud pressure. Cloud generally, people have this phenomenal thought saying that, I migrate to cloud, I get speed, I get scale, I get resilience, I get availability, and I get cost discipline. But what they forget, the whole point is that all of this is certainly achievable provided there is a good roadmap that you create. Now, the obvious question that for people in this webinar would have on their mind is, Ramesh, are you saying that we don't plan? No, you do plan. You do plan. We will look at the missing piece of the missing link right in about maybe 3-4 slides from now. And the last bucket is called the risk pressure. Cutover failure can really damage the trust that customers have put in your enterprise. Now, simply saying that the moment the cutover doesn't go well, customers' trust gets eroded. And there's a second thought saying that are we in good hands? Are we in safe hands? Are these guys capable of running my business or helping me run my business? So eventually we say that minimum downtime is not a deployment pattern, right? So there are two parts to it, right? All until deployment and post deployment, right? Now it goes beyond a deployment. It's also about governance, architecture, data, release, categories, types of release, the reliability statements that you make, the security discipline. One of the key components that I will probably expand upon 5, 6, 7 slides later is about governance architecture, how the tech architecture and governance architecture needs to come hand in hand to be able to make a migration successful. Now, why the question now we will ask ourselves is, are we saying that the familiar modernization approach still creates risk? The answer is yes, right? It's a very clear yes. There's not even an iota of doubt. Why? What are the reasons, right? Let's look at how a typical, and let me make this disclaimer, right? This whole webinar or this framework that we have put together is not about, replacing the modernization approaches that the big wigs of the world, like the Amazons and the Googles and the Microsofts are propagating, right? It's not about replacing them. We are trying to create a layer that can sit on top of them, bringing in one more element called controlled migration. And that's exactly where we specialize in saying that, okay, while we use the familiar approaches, we are going to add those spicy little items to the familiar modernization approach that will make your migration absolutely safe, secure, and controlled. Now let's look at what are the reasons why we think this is a risk-based approach. The current one's a risk-based approach. The 6R is used as a label. If you're familiar with the 6Rs, it's nothing but rehost, replatform, refactor, repurchase, retire, and retain. Six broad R's, right? Your migration typically should ideally fall into one of those. In a typical cloud terms, you will call it as cloud enabled, cloud managed, and cloud native, right? And then the repurchase, retire, retain are the subsequent blowdown of that. Now, generally, these are used as a label. People think that, when I decide to modernize, when I decide to migrate to cloud, my first job is to look at which of these 6 buckets do I need to position myself in. Right, while the retire and retain, I'll probably keep that aside for now, but probably for the first 4, where should I really fit in? Now, the entire solutioning, the entire architecting revolves around which bucket you typically fall in. Right, so now it misses key concepts of how do I handle downtime if something were to go wrong during migration? First point. Second point, what are my dependency services? Have I taken into consideration all those dependencies? Let me elaborate on this. If you don't have a good observability system in your ecosystem, the chances are that you've probably missed quite a few dependencies. You ideally should have a service map, a service topology that clearly tells you what your critical services are, what are the downstream and upstream services that are dependent on those critical services. If the critical services were to fail, what are the downstream, upstream services that will go down? That's the second missing point that we'll miss. The third is something like a dependency depth is nothing but a blast radius. Typically, we talk about, so when this goes down, what is the impact? Where does the radius extend up to? And lastly, am I ready in terms of handling these operationally? Do I have the right tools? Do I have the right skills to manage this? Do I have the right run books? Do I have the right playbooks? Do I have the right process procedures? Do I have the right governance mechanism in place? All of that is probably part of the 6R that we probably are missing in the current familiar modernization approach. The second reason why we say that target state is over-designed. It's a very typical, very standard approach that most enterprises adopt. You want to move from on-prem to cloud. You're probably a $20 million company, and then you probably design your future state that can probably support a $100 million business. The question is, does it make sense? Are you not over-designing it? Do you really need all of that? Well, okay, you probably may end up saying that, yeah, I am taking future into consideration, but fine, but what is the cost that is getting sunk today? Right, so the point is target state is over-designed, which is fair. You have an expectation that you want to scale up automatically in the future, which is, again, without over-designing, you could still address that point. But the second key question is, while you do that, you underplan the entire transition approach, right? So while the destination, you want the destination to be absolutely spot on, what we really miss or miscalculate or underplan is how do we get there? What are the obstacles that we will need to wade through when we want to get to that kind of target state? And lastly, what are those unseen obstacles that could crop up? Have I anticipated the unexpected? Am I expecting the unexpected? We are trained as human beings, as the monitoring systems. You talk about any of the those monitoring tools like the Nagio, the Zabbix, the ServiceNow. Most of them are trained to expect the expected things that go down. Expecting the unexpected, very few tools does. And they will do it only when you teach them, when you train them to look at all those unexpected behaviors. And how do you do that? By creating patterns. How do you create patterns? So it goes a long way. The simple statement that we're trying to establish or make is a key point saying that while the destination is over-designed or well-designed, let me give the benefit of doubt to the customers. It's very well designed, absolutely optimal. Have we done a good job in terms of designing how the transition is going to happen? The third bucket we're talking about is key aspect in today's modern technological world. DevOps, SRE, and security are separated. Now, DevOps itself propagates the theory or the framework of collaborating between different organizations, especially development and operations. That's why it came to be called out as DevOps, right? SRE talks about digital reliability. Security talks about all your IAM, your secrets, and all of that. But the point is, are these three blending together? My key point is cloud gives you the platform, right? DevOps gives you the release mechanism. SRE talks to you about the reliability. Security gives you that trust. Unless these come together, there is no way you're going to win the customer's trust and confidence. That's a very simple statement, powerful statement that we will make. And lastly, the most modern term that everybody loves to use, AI, artificial intelligence. This is positioned as a magic. People think that it's a magic wand. You rotate it, things will automatically happen. You buy an AI-based tool, it should do everything that you require. Sadly, the answer is no, right? Now, AI, there are different LLMs, there are different modes in which you build tools, right? The key aspect is how are these tools being governed? Are there guardrails that have established, right? So there is always that human element that will be required. See, there is no way you can come back and say that the engineering decision-making capability can be handed over to AI. Absolutely not. AI can still help us in doing assessments, surveys, can actually help us code, do a lot of stuff. But when it comes to logical conclusion, making large decisions, risk-based decisions, there is an element of human intervention that is absolutely required. And that's where we say that AI without guardrails, without governance, is probably you're taking a big risk. It can become reckless. It can probably throw you off the rails. So summarizing, our key differentiator is reframed version of the modernization as a sequence of control gates that shifts the focus from the tech availability to business reliability. A very strong statement that we are making with a stamp of authority saying that, yes, we are probably one of those players who will talk to you as our customers as to how do you establish your credentials in the market as somebody who talks business reliability. Tech availability is probably a foregone term now. Customers no longer, okay, your payment gateway fails, go try telling a customer that your payment gateway fails. He says, I don't think that's any of my business. My experience was bad. People talk about reliability. They don't talk about component failure. They're not interested. Server uptime is a foregone conversation. People talk about user journey, user experience. So that's where this whole concept, this idea came up saying that can we really get to a framework that can sit right on top of what the big wigs are offering today. Moving on to the next slide. Now let's quickly look at what makes this framework different. Common migration discussions on how to move technology. Now, I'm sure, I don't know, I would probably, I'll take a wild guess, right? Maybe 30, 40, 50% of the people in the webinar are techies, core techies. Now the 30, 40, 50% probably executives, or a mix of both, right? A right mix of both. Given that most of us understand technology fairly well, we understand technology. It not necessarily does not mean that we can exhibit our knowledge of technology by doing something that's core technology, right? That's something that we'll probably take a step back and say that, okay, are there people, are there skilled resources that can probably get this executed, right? Now, this framework will explain how do you preserve control while moving. So this is especially for architects, the CXOs, who we are trying to touch upon, saying that, while the teams below you are making recommendations on the need for us to migrate from a legacy on-prem to an on-cloud modernized approach, what are those pitfalls that you should be aware of? And what is the benefit of using a framework that Teceze is currently proposing, right? The common approach starts with a cloud architecture, a clear cloud. Okay, this is how, which is the end state. This is how it's going to look like. Now, the business safe modernization framework that Teceze is proposing, the right side is what we are proposing. It starts with the business downtime tolerance. What is the amount of downtime that the business can tolerate? Remember, I was just saying business does not want a perfect cloud architecture. It simply says that, can you give me something which is reliable, where the customers don't ditch me, they don't abandon me? Your employees will start telling you, can we get the system that is available, does not disrupt our work? So we are getting into a different, we're getting a completely different paradigm shift in terms of what kind of conversations are we supposed to have. The second key point is uses 6R as a migration label. Generally, any cloud conversation, as I told you, begins with, okay, 6R, which R are you in? And then the answer is a big debate, a brainstorming exercise, probably a couple of days. There is a design thinking workshop that gets done. Should we refactor? Should we repurchase? Should we replatform? There are pluses and minuses that get discussed, debated. And then finally, you arrive at a conclusion. But then what gets missed is the whole conversation is about which bucket do we fit in to get to the cloud architecture. Now, in the Teceze approach, we are talking about combining 6R, which is the rehost, replatform, refactor, repurchase, retire, and retain. That discussion with an element of risk, with a tinge of risk. What kind of risks should we anticipate? Are we prepared for that? Do we have the ability to do that? Do we have automation enough to handle risks? Do we have manual support? Do we have the skills? Do we have the tools? Do we have the scripts? The dependency? Do we have all the services mapped out very well? If not, can we do that? And not just do that, can we also see if they really are getting impacted? Finally, getting into what is called a readiness scoring. This is one key concept, right? Most organizations today saying that, oh, I think I'm fairly good. My network is strong. My applications are not very old. And I think I'm probably ready to migrate to cloud. That's a blind score that you probably score yourself. So it's ideal that you get into a scoring exercise, and how we get to a scoring exercise, something that we will see as part of a demo about 15-20 minutes from now. The next one is focusing on the target state. The common approach focus on target state. We saw that before. Somebody has to go on mute. Okay. The common approach focuses on the target state, and the Teceze approach says that design the target state, the transition state, and rollback state, which means we are talking about three architectures. On the left, I'm talking about one architecture called the target state architecture. On the right side, I'm talking about a target state architecture, a transition architecture, and a rollback architecture in case something goes wrong. Right? That kind of tells you that we are really bringing in the element of control into this whole transition of migrating from legacy on-prem to a modernized approach. The next one is treating DevOps, SRE, security separately. Typically, these teams come in at their own pace, at their own juncture. They do what they're good at doing, they get out. So is there a handshake? Probably yes. Is the handshake good enough to make sure that we are able to look at evidence of reliability post-migration? The answer probably is not no. There are always those disconnected points that we will see. get to us with a detailed description. We'll probably show you all that in terms of how those disconnects do happen. And then on the right side, we say that we treat them as one migration safety system. As I told you, all these three should come together, right? Yeah, DevOps, SRE, security becomes part of your tech architecture. And then there is a governance architecture that we put in place. That talks about digital reliability. These have to come together as one single migration approach that will then make sure that your migration is successful with minimum downtime. In fact, I would probably go a step ahead to say maybe zero downtime, maybe. There's no, I mean, people say, is there a possibility of zero downtime? Probably you have HA configured, from a customer standpoint, there'll be very, all chances that they will experience zero downtime. The next one is uses AI as productivity helper. And then on the right side, he says uses AI for assessment, testing, creating runbooks and risk intelligence, right? Look at the starking difference, right? We are using, on the left, we're using to enhance productivity, which is good, not bad, right? But can they really do the level of improvement that they need to do? One, two. Second question is with guardrails coming in, which means that with intervention, human intervention, are we really becoming productive? We don't know. It's a big question that needs to be answered. We are not discounting what's being done there, but the question to ask us, is that really giving us productivity? And if it does, is there enough manual intervention or human intervention or guardrails in any distinct form that make sure that AI does not run reckless, right? On the right side, we are talking about using AI for assessments, testings, creating runbooks, creating risk intelligence, risk matrices that advises us, that gives us enough data to understand what actions do we need to go back and take. And the last point is, this is a very serious point that we're talking about. Generally, the migration, people consider migration as over when you've completed cutover. Now we are extending that. Our framework extends a little beyond that, saying that, oh, I've done the migration, fantastic. Cutover is done. I dust my hands off and move on. And then right after cutover, if there are issues, I say, oh, not my problem. You should talk to support. No, that's not what it is, right? The success of the migration will depend upon how stable, how reliable, how optimized your states are post-migration. If you don't do that, remember the customer journey, the user journey that we talked about goes for a toss. So the right side talks about continues through stabilization, SLOs and optimization. We'll go into a bit more detail as we move forward. Now, business safe modernization framework, this is what we are propagating, what we're really bringing to the market. Look, the approach might look really familiar, but let me quickly walk through, discover, what applications, what are the dependency, what data should we move, how critical are they, do we have service maps done, do we have criticality of servers and services, all of them. So you discover all those invisible elements that were probably never made visible to the business. The business always expected things to run. What went wrong behind the scene was looked at more as a tech problem erstwhile. Today, a tech problem can cause business disruption. And business wants to know what happened. I think I bring this point very frequently. Today, it's an appified world. When I say appified, everything runs an application. Food is an app. Banking is an app. Insurance is an app. I mean, why all that? Jovially you talk. Dating is an app today. So everything runs an app. App is all tech. Today, tech is no longer the enabler. It's a business. So it's important for us to discover all those salient, invisible issues or dependencies that were invisible to us for a long, long time. That's the first part where you discover, right? The discovery state, normally the discover term is used to understand what exists. It does not go beyond that. We are saying we'll take it beyond that, not just what exists. We also say that what existed that was not visible to us. That's the core message that Teceze is giving you. Second, decide. The 6R choice, downtime budget, wave priority and risk score. What is the current risk score? And I'll give you all that when we do the demo, right? How much tolerance can my business really tolerate? Can my business run without a system for, let's say, 15 minutes, 10 minutes, 12 minutes? Doubtful, right? So you decide what is the elements that you really. This is very similar to the most of you, I'm sure all of you would have heard about site reliability engineering, SRE. There's a concept called error budget. That's your allowable downtime, authorized downtime during regular operations, right? So the downtime budget here is very similar to an era budget, but this is very specific to the migration. And what is my wave priority? On what basis will I do? And you look at some of the patterns, right? Strangler pattern is one very good way we can actually do this, wave by wave. And then what is the risk score? Risk score will depend upon your readiness scores. The third one is design. I told you 3 architectures. Target architecture, we all understand what it is. Transition architecture, what is my roadmap? How do I get there? What are the pitfalls that I should expect? Unexpected ones, that is your transition architecture. And a rollback architecture. Rollback architecture in the event if my migration goes for a toss, for some strange reason, despite all my planning. Do I have my rollback plan? No, it's not just enough. Do I have my rollback plan tested? Do I know when I should initiate my rollback plan? Is it automated? Has it been tested? What is the threshold that I've set in? Which part of the population is going to be impacted? All of that forms part of your design. So 3 specific architectures that we talk about, which is target, transition, and rollback. There's a 4th one that will come to later on when you talk about governance architecture. Then the 4th one is build, landing zone. Now remember, what you discover, what you decide, and what you design typically influences the build. So all these will tell you what size, what kind of landing zone do you need, what should be the size of your CI/CD pipeline, how frequent are your releases going to be, how robust should your IAC, infrastructure as a code, be, what are the different security parameters that you will look at, what kind of scanning are you going to stay with SAST and DAST, or are you going to look at EAST and RAST? There are a lot of things that you look at as part of the build. Now the build will get influenced by the first 3 steps, right? They typically dictate how your build should look like. And then the migrate. Once this is all done, the entire things are clearly understood, you start the migration. And when you really look at migration in the new realm of things that we are proposing, you start looking at data sync, controlled cutover, validation, rollback. And I'm going to go through each of them quickly, right? Data sync is nothing but data in my legacy system in a different format, shape, size. When I migrate, does my new landing zone understand that? Or should I migrate it in a format, shape, and size that it can understand? How perfectly sync are they, right? Are they really connecting those dots that was being connected in the legacy system? It's so important for us to plan that, right? That's one part. Second is controlled cutover. How do you establish controlled cutover? There are governance mechanisms and controlled release or controlled cutover mechanism that we will look at. What pattern we will adopt, that will determine how you really want to make sure that your migration cutover becomes successful. The last one is validation rollback. Once you've done, migrate cutover is done, you validate if it's successful. If it is not, you roll back. If it is, you continue in terms of looking at stabilization and optimization. Optimization is a very key concept where we look at phase 6 and 7 in a separate set of slides. Stabilization and optimize. I'll club both of these. Stabilizing is nothing but, am I burning through my SLOs? SLOs are nothing service level objectives that I have fixed for your product or service that you're proposing. Am I ready for incident? Do I have self-healing solutions in place? What is my performance level? What are my error rates? What are my thresholds? What are my latencies? Are they within control? Am I bursting them? If so, what are the reasons? Do I put a permanent fix? So all that is part of the stabilization journey that you will look at. And then finally, the optimization is where you start looking at the cost. FinOps is a key concept where we talk about, especially when we talk about cloud, multi-cloud or hybrid cloud, you always start looking at, okay, I have no clue of what cost is hitting me. It depends on which workload from which cloud is using which service from which cloud. Complex statement, but very simply put, you really need to understand what you're using, where, when, why, how. 5 questions. What, where, when, why, how. If you can understand that, I think FinOps becomes very easy. You can probably make sure that your cost is kind of optimized. Resilience. Have I built in unwanted resilience? Do I have the right set of resilience in place? Have I under-resiliented my infrastructure or my application or my ecosystem? Overdone it? AI assisted continuous. At what stages have I introduced AI? Where am I putting my AI tools in place so that they can do what they're expected to do? All of this becomes the part of your safe modernization framework. This comes across about 7 stages. Every stage is a control objective, not just an activity list. So the framework manages the transition not just the destination. It also helps you orchestrate how the transition happens. Let's look at each of the stage quickly for 1 or 2 minutes, right? The minimum before that, the minimum downtime control points. So while we look through those 7 different stages, we'll also look at those control points that will really manage or help you manage the downtimes. The first one is, let me go through the first step. I love the statement, right? Control points well documented just becomes a record, which is very true, and not an evidence of reliability. So each control point must become an evidence in itself before go live, which means that they should be able to produce evidence of everything having gone through successfully. That's exactly what the emphasis is in, right? So we'll use these control points as gates before committing to a migration wave or a production cutover. What are those different control points? The first one is downtime budget. How much can my business tolerate? Data safety plan. How will the sync happen? Validation happen? How will the rollback happen? When will it happen? The security gate. Or do I have the right identity and access management system in place? Right people having right access to the right resources, right? And then we talk about secrets. How are they stored? What are my vulnerabilities? I have done the scans. Have all the scans been passed? Do I have evidence for passing through all those vulnerability scans? Are those evidence validated? All of that. Who has signed off on it? The release strategy. Which cutover plan am I going to talk about, right? Is it going to be blue-green? Is it going to be canary? Or a strangler pattern? Or a future flag? Which release pattern are we going to really talk about? Dependency map. Do I have a clear dependency? This is one of the key aspects that I have done so much consulting, gentlemen, ladies and gentlemen. I've hardly seen very few enterprises who've got a clear dependency map, right? A lot of them do have, but it's very, very incomplete. Very, very incomplete. Does not really talk about the holistic estate that they want. So dependency map in terms of which users are getting impacted, which APIs are we calling, which jobs are getting impacted, which database are creating what problems, which partners are getting impacted. You go to that level of understanding, right? Anything during cutover, which of my partners, why is it getting impacted? What APIs are getting impacted? Then the reliability gate, which is, do I have SLOs in place? Do I have error budgets in place? Am I burning through them? What are my thresholds that I'm setting up? What observability pattern do I have got? Have I included observability tagging as part of my coding? What are my coding standards? All of that becomes part of your reliability gate. The rollback decision. Who decides when to roll back? What are the thresholds? These are the minimum downtime control point that gets incorporated into those 7 stages that we saw in the previous slide. Now let's quickly go through those 7. I described in detail, but we'll quickly go through this. Right? Discovery, make the hidden system visible, right? Or I was telling you, right? A lot of things that were invisible to us, we'll have to make them visible to us. Discovery for till about 10, 12 years back, I raised my hand with a lot of humility, accepting that even for me, discovery meant identifying what existed today. It never occurred that I should look for those invisible items that could create ruckus at the back end, right? So exactly that's what Discover is all about. It could be application inventory, it could be dependency mapping, it could be data risks. The downtime is often caused by dependencies that were not seen early enough. If you've not seen a dependency early enough, there are bright chances that the downtime would be caused by that. The output, generally the discovery stage output is always an application heat map that will combine the technical complexity with business interruption impact. How complex is my technicality today and what business impact it will have if this hidden dependency goes for a toss. The second stage is decide. As I said, 6R only is the starting point. The rehost, replatform, refactor. Rehost, as I told you, simple. We call it as cloud enable, just move hardware. Move your application as is. Replatform, build on-prem, run on cloud, cloud managed, cloud native, refactor, redesign for cloud. Very simple analogies, right? And to do this, it simply says that this is what we need to do to cut over. It does not tell you, you probably have looked at, okay, will my application work on Java 8.1 or .NET 18.1? Those are discussions that you have. But are we really looking at what services am I moving from a legacy app into a microservices based approach? How am I splitting my current app into multiple services? When I use containers and Dockers, what are my guarantees that it is well orchestrated? So all those questions for the top 3, right? And then repurchase, retire and retain. It's a very clear decision, right? In the event you say that, no, I don't want to go back and refactor, replatform, rehost. I am actually Repurchase is probably somebody has already built something like that. You can avail that as a SaaS, software as a service. Retire. Okay, I bought that as a SaaS. I'm going to probably retire. Maybe you do a parallel run for some time. And that's a quick dependency roadmap that will create, saying that how long should your existing systems run for you to gain that confidence and trust, saying that my new systems will work automatically. Retain is a simple task, saying that keep as is until readiness or value changes. So you continue with your current legacy systems while you're not migrated everything, probably migrated a part of it, the rest of it is continuing on the old system. That's the retain part. The decision formula is 6R path plus the downtime tolerance. This is what the new framework will give you. The old framework, the existing frameworks, the common framework in the industry talks about 6R. And what we are saying, Teceze is saying is 6R plus downtime tolerance, plus dependency risks, plus data risks, plus team readiness. All of this will lead to migration wave priority. Where what priority, how do you prioritize which waves should go first, which wave should go later? Coming to stage 3, design and build for control transition. The target architecture, how should my cloud architecture look like? What should be my landing zone? What APIs? How much managed services? What should be my scaling model? What should I use in terms of containers? How do I orchestrate that? Then the transition architecture talks about, this is the key part, that the specialty that Teceze is bringing, right? The transition architecture, the rollback, and the operating architecture. The transition architecture will talk about coexistence. How long should both of my environments coexist? How do I plan my routing? Let's say if I'm using a strangler pattern, on what basis will I route? What volume of traffic for which modules should get routed to the new version, which should stay with the old version? Integration. How do I plan my integration? What are the pitfalls that I need to anticipate in my integration? Data sync. How many types of data exist? How do I plan for migrating them? And then phased user movement. Can I really identify different buckets of users and move them by phases depending upon the priority, need, and the business criticality? The third is rollback architecture. In the event of doing all of this, I start migrating. Wave 1 done, wave 1 failed. Rollback quick. My threshold, my path, my decision, who decides, who signs off, when do I kick that off? Should it kick off automatically, or should there be a guardrail that should be put in place to decide, okay, this is probably the right time to roll back? And the last one is the operating architecture, which simply talks about how should my CI/CD pipeline look like? How should my infrastructure as a code look like? What kind of observability tool should I put in place? How do I configure my observability system? What should be observable? Where should I use open OTel? What are the security gates that I need to put in place? Who will own the entire model, the operating architecture model? Ideally, operating architecture model should be between DevOps and SRE. While that's a different discussion, but just from information standpoint, that's something that they will have to own. So the build gate, here we're introducing something called a build gate, where every production migration wave should have automated a deployment. Validated infrastructure, security guardrails, observability, and rollback readiness before cutover. Once these are available, the deployment can actually be automated. If the checkboxes are ticked, today we are in a world of automation, right? Right from your coding all the way to release, everything can be automated. GitHub Actions. There are tools that can really automate your entire flow end to end, and every time it moves from one phase to another phase in the life cycle, software development life cycle or operational life cycle. It creates an auditable trail of artifacts. It says that these are 6 things I'm supposed to do, and these 6 things have been done. Here are the results that you can go back and verify, which means that you're confident. It establishes that sense of trust in you, saying that, okay, system says that I'm done. Now, to be doubly sure, there are times when you might, for critical areas, you might want to put those, I keep them favorite term, I keep calling it the guardrail, that says that, okay, I want to double check if this really has happened. So that's the build gate, which we'll cover in stage 3 and 4. Stage 5 is migrate, reduce the blast radius, do not bet on one big cutover. Very famous statement, no big bang changes, guys. It all should be in small change, right? So different patterns, strangler pattern, shadow traffic, blue-green, feature flags, canary, data signal validation. Let me quickly go through it. Strangler is nothing but, your current system is running. You don't migrate all the features of your existing application one time. You migrate one feature, that traffic pertaining to that part alone goes to that. For the same group, if they want to access the other parts of your ERP, they come back to the old. So on the front end, you create a facade. Facade is something like a block, something like a wall. You create a wall. For the user accessing it, it is just one entry point. But at the back end, we will still divide the traffic and make sure that the right traffic goes to the right versions. Simple, I mean, is this blue-green? This is not blue-green, definitely not blue. This is more creating a facade where you can actually control how you want to migrate slowly, because the users don't see anything going down. They are not worried if all my user authentication happens in new version and then all my queries happen in old version. They don't care. For them, it is an end-to-end journey. Remember, that's what we have been talking about. The second one is shadow traffic. Run production-like traffic without exposing user impact. Very simply saying that you must run the production traffic. Use production traffic in your testing arena so that you can actually look at the user impact. How does it impact the user? Blue-green, 2 servers. I don't think I need to go through it quickly, but 2 servers, one running version 1. When you are ready with version 2, put your version 2 on server number 2, divert traffic. Once you're ready, after all your testing, divert traffic, which means that it is completely transparent to the user. So, but this is an expensive proposition, blue-green. Feature flags, build all the features, but hide them, right? Release only those features that are required for a specific set of users, a specific country, a specific domain. Canary is nothing but handful of users. Do the new release only for a handful of users, test it with them, let them certify that all functions are working, all non-functionalities are working, then you can start releasing to larger set of users. Data sync and validation is continuous reconciliation before and after cutover. So as you cut over phase by phase, make sure that you continue to manage and monitor and observe the data that is going in. Is it going? Are they connecting it to the right strings? That's a key concept that you look at from a migration standpoint. So the migration principle talks about the safest migration is not the one with the best cloud design. It is the one with the smallest irreversible, which means that wherever your need to roll back is minimum, that is called the safest migration. People think, oh, migration successful, you probably need 3 rollbacks. Not good. 1 rollback took a little longer, safe migration, successful migration. Step 6, DevOps SRE security operators 1 migration. I will just give you the bottom statement, summarizes everything. Cloud gives you the environment. DevOps gives you the release orchestration release mechanism. SRE gives you the reliability controls. Security gives you the trust controls. Minimum downtime happens only when these 4 comes together before production moment. Simple. So that's the whole agenda for this slide, where all of these need to come together for your migration to be successful, safe, and controlled. AI accelerator is useful only when governed by evidence. We talked about it in detail before. I'll keep this really short. Without guardrails, your AI models or AI tools are bound to fail. When I say fail, they probably could end up getting a lot of bias. Their learning cycles are going to be very, very short. Pattern building becomes very, very low. So ideally, if you want to complete autonomy with AI, you probably use them for assessment, improving the speed of assessment, creating evidence, creating run books. Use them for those. And then for anything that's above that, we are not discouraging the usage of AI, but use them, but with certain amount of controllability, with some guard. The guardrail could be a process check. It need not be manual intervention. So while AI makes decisions modernization faster, more complete and more auditable, it should not make it more reckless. Right? That's the message. This is the slide where I talk about stabilization, optimization after cutover. Stabilization is monitoring your SLOs, SLAs, incident volume, your problem tickets, your capacity management, your user experience, data consistency. All of that becomes part of stabilization. And then optimization is how do I optimize my cost, my utilization, performance, error rates, quality. All of that fall into the optimization bucket. The institution, once these are all done, pick the learnings and institutionalize it so that it can then be spread across different parts of the organization. So at this stage, really, phases 6 and 7, take an SRE view and define reliability before cutover. Measure it during cutover and improve it after cutover. So before cutover, during cutover, and after cutover, compare them and see what improvements you need to make. With that, what we're going to do is, we talked about that running an assessment, right? We are saying that the scan that we will do to your environment, the plan that we will create out of it, and the proof. All of this is getting done right in front of your eyes. Let me run this demo quickly. It should not take more than 6 or 7 minutes. Okay, This is a AI driven tool, guys. So this is basically a risk assessment, which will also give you a clear 90-day plan of how you can upscale your readiness. We have kind of divided that across 5 critical towers that every business will look at. The first one is business risk, downtime tolerance, and executive ownership. Approximately about 4 questions in each tower that will broadly summarize. Business downtime budget is defined. Let's say you score 2 here. And then application criticality, revenue impact, and SL obligations are documented, but not well documented. So I'm going back and saying 2. Migration wave sequencing is risk-based, not infrastructure-led. I say not really done, so I'm going with a 1 here. Rollback expectations and fallback windows are agreed with the business. Yes, it is kind of a 2, between 2 and 3. For stability's sake, I'll take it as 3 because I'm 70% done. I go to the next domain. This is going to talk about dependencies, data movement, integration, and rollback. Application dependency map is current and covers all upstream, downstream integrations. Absolutely no. If that were there, why am I even doing this scan, right? That's clearly a 1 there. Transition architecture supports coexistence between legacy and cloud native components. Remember, we all have the plan that this will be, after cutover, we'll keep this for some time. Although we will only say that when that fails, we'll come over to us. We don't create a plan. So we'll probably give a 2 for this. Rollback architecture is documented with restore points and decision thresholds. Rollback architecture is documented, but the rest of it is not done. Restore points and decision thresholds are not done. So that's a 2 again. Data migration covers sync, validation, reconciliation, dual write. We have done sync and validation, but reconciliation, data, dual write risk, we have not done. So we're going to have it at 2. Let's go to the next domain, which is landing zone, CI/CD, IAC, testing, release readiness. How ready are we? Cloud landing zone, network IAM. I'm going to give all of us a 1 because we've not covered the risks. Straight. CI/CD pipeline automates build, test, security scan, and rollback stages. All done excepting rollback. So you give yourself a 2. Release strategy uses canary features, flag the blue-green to limit blast radius. Not all of it. I've chosen something, but I don't know if that's good for me. So I'm at 2. Pipeline gates include security, quality, and go-no evidence before cutover. Clearly a 1 because it does not tell me from a quality and a security standpoint whether really good to go. Let me go to the next domain. This is SLOs, observability, incident readiness, and runbooks. SLIs, SLOs, and error budget expectation defined for critical user journeys. SLIs done, SLAs done, no SLOs, probably a 2. Log metrics and traces, I don't even have trace. I don't even know what it is. 1. Incident runbooks and escalation paths are documented and rehearsed. Documented, partially rehearsed, I'll give myself 3. Post-cutover stabilization criteria, hypercare period. Hypercare period is defined, but post-cutover stabilization not done. So that's 2 for me. I go to probably the last tower, which is DevSecOps, controls and compliance, evidence and AI acceleration. Identity, access and privileged access controls are migration ready for cloud workloads. Maybe a 2, not all of it. Secret certificates and keys are managed in Vault, not in code or pipelines. I doubt because quite a few of them are hard coded. So I'm going to give myself a 1. It's basically a 1.5, but I'm giving myself 1. Security validation is mandatory gate before each migration wave cutover. I say yes. Though it's done manually, I'm giving myself a 3. AI assisted outputs are reviewed and validated before use in architecture production. I say yes, 3. I'm good with that. So now I'm going to create a generate a readiness report. This will now create a readiness report for your current environment that you will see on your screen. So let's look at each tower, right? Your business criticality is at high risk at 2. Architecture and data is at about 1.8, high risk. Cloud and DevOps at 1.5, that's high risk. Your 2.0 high risk, security and AI 2.3 high risk, which means that if you plan for a cutover, there are bright chances that your migration will, not that it'll succeed, but it'll drain you of energy and cash. You'll just not know where to start, where to stop. You'll be inundated with problems. That's your exact situation today. Now, once this is done, how do I get to a state of readiness? I'm going to give you that, right? This is again AI generated, a tool that is done. I'll generate a 90-day report. This is how for each of those are foundational architectures, pipeline SRE security, validation pilot. This is a sample report that you will get. Day 1 to 30, what should you focus on? 31 to 60, what should you focus on? 61 to 90, what should you focus on? Now, let's say 90 days you have done all of this. Now you want to say, okay, where am I today? Rerun. I'm going to rerun the scan. I'll go back to the same screen. Now I look at all this. Maybe business downtime. This is all defined, signed up by executive sponsor. Yes, 4. Application criticality, revenue impact, SLA obligation documented. I'm giving myself a 4. Migration wave sequencing is risk-based, not infrastructure-led. I'm actually in between, so I'm going to give myself a 3 here. Rollback expectations, fallback windows are agreed with the business. Clearly agreed, that's about a 4. Next domain, application dependency map is current and covers all upstream, downstream integrations. Oh, 80% done because my current observability tool is not capable of doing this. So I'm going to give myself a 3 here. Transition architecture supports coexistence. Very clearly done, well done. That's about 4. Rollback architecture is documented with restore points and decision thresholds. Done clearly because we learned it. Data migration covers sync, validation, reconciliation. Dual write risk is also covered. So I'm going to give myself a 4 here clearly. Move to the next domain, cloud landing zone network. Since I'm covering all the risks, I have probably done a good job in terms of defining my landing zone, which is 4. My CI/CD, since I've got a good landing zone, I also plan for my CI/CD pipeline automation and IAC, that's a 4. Release strategy. Earlier, I was confused. I had one of those between the canary feature and blue-green to limit blast radius. I wasn't sure if that was the right. Now I know what is right for me. I've documented it. I've tested it. So I'm a 4 here as well. Pipeline gates include security, quality, and no-go evidence before cutover. We have done pipeline gate, but security gate is still being worked upon because there are a lot of missing ends there. So I'm at probably 3.5 for benefit. I'm going to give myself a 3, a low score. Right, and then I come to the 4th tower where we talk about SLIs, SLOs, and error budget expectations are defined for critical user journeys. So 4 log metrics. Since my observability tool is not good enough, I'm going to give myself a 3 here. Incident runbooks and escalation paths are documented and rehearsed. Good. I'm giving myself a 4. Post cutover stabilization criteria and hypercare period defined. This is again a 4. I go to the last domain, which is the security part. Identity IA, privilege access controls, they're all ready for cloud workloads. Yes, that's a 4. Secret certificates, I've removed all the hood coding, hard coding, that's a 4. Validations mandatory gate before each migration, that's a 4. AI assisted outputs are reviewed and validated before use in architecture production. This is already a 3, I'm giving a 4 now. I've strengthened it. Now let me generate the readiness report. Beautifully, you'll find that it will compare your earlier state and this state. That's the output that you'll get. Now look at where you were before. You are at 38%. Your scores are right in front of your eyes for each of those towers. 2, 1.8, 1.5, 2, and 2.3. You've got to 7 to 6, 3.8, 3.8, 3.8, 3.4. So your security AI is the strongest. Rest of them can actually move up to 4. You can actually do a little bit of job to get yourself to 4. Now this will tell you clearly that we're actually ready. This is trust built in front of your eyes. We scanned, we planned, and we're giving you the proof that this is how you will assess yourself to know if you're even ready for a migration, leave alone creating a migration plan. With that said, we'll quickly go back to the slide. Now, where does your organization actually stand? After having seen that, the question that I want all of you to leave this room with is, where do I stand? And we are proposing, Teceze is proposing, let's find out together. Reach out to us and we will probably schedule some time, we'll converse, we will see how we can help you understand where you stand today.
Thank you, Ramesh, for sharing your valuable insights on application modernization and cloud transformation. We really appreciate our attendees for joining today's session and this engagement. For any further discussion or support, please feel free to connect with our team. And thank you once again. We are looking forward to seeing you in our upcoming sessions and webinars. Bye-bye. Have a good day. Or if you
are there any questions that somebody would like to ask?
Questions are there, but if anyone has any questions, they can come up.
Otherwise, you can summarize the question and send it to me, Preeti. I can have them answered.
Okay, fine.
Share them back with the
whatever.
All right.
Yes. Okay.
Thank you, guys. Thank you, everyone. Have a good rest of the day.
Thank you, Ramesh. Thank you, Preeti. Thanks.
Thank you.